911, what's your emergency? Hello and welcome to We'll Throw the After Party, your favorite late night broadcast. I am hostily taking over this week, of course, to talk about one and only 911 OG, formerly of Fox, now of ABC. But before we get to that, I am joined by my lovely co-hosts. How we doing today, y'all? Marissa, we love the vibe. How are you feeling about the new Barbie?
I'm feeling great about Barbie. I'm embracing my Barbie era. As has been established on this show, 911 is not my show, so I will not be owning it in my corner of the screen. We will be living in Barbie world.
However, Liz is owning it in her corner of the screen. We got the one and only Angela Bassett behind you. How you feeling?
Am I pointing the right way?
Yeah,
Sometimes
you
it
are.
mirrors it, and then you try to point to something, but it's like the opposite. Yeah, this is Angela Bassett. Yes. Well, I'm laughing at your intro because I heard two things, and I don't want you to tell me which one you meant. I heard you're hastily taking over the show, but also you're like hostilely, as in like with hostility, you're taking over the show.
That
and I
was the
like both
intent.
of those options, both hastily and taking us hostile energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've had such a journey trying to watch this week's episode, so we'll talk about that when we get to the segment. I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm so happy I made it to tonight's episode, and I actually have a lot of new opinions about this show, which really match up with the way I've always watched the shows. I'm very excited to share.
Of course you do. And of course, somebody who's seen the show a million times with me, my lovely wife, Alexis. How's it going?
Hi! I'm so excited to be here.
I am so glad that you will be sharing in my enjoyment of the show for this takeover. But we will get to that in a bit. Before we dive right in to all things 911 and Taylor Wong, let's talk about what we've been enjoying. I've been enjoying White Color. I know, brand new television. But somebody
Sorry,
may or may
that
not.
joke hit me like 5 seconds late. Sorry. I had such a late response to that. Sorry, please continue.
Somebody else may or may not also be watching White Collar and texted me about it. So
I don't know who that person is. It is definitely not
Marissa.
me.
Definitely Marissa.
That's definitely my kind of show, guys.
You know, heists, art crime, a possible triad. Totally a thing Marissa watches.
You know what? I think that I'm moving closer and closer to being in that side of the show's portfolio of people that watch, listen, read those types of plots. I just need to put that out there because you were saying that and I was like, oh yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Our Venn diagram is shifting farther apart.
While we capitalize on this marital spat, Marissa, what have you been enjoying?
Surprisingly a lot because I have not had a lot of time, but when I was thinking about it, I've been watching a lot this week. I finished The Great. It was great. I really enjoyed this week's episode of Ted Lasso. So it's been a weirdy season, but this week really got me. And then I rewatched all of Fleabag because that's what I do when I don't know what else to watch. And then, yes, I've been enjoying Barbie, the Barbie movie. There is a new trailer. There's the Barbie movie album, the Dua Lipa song, the music video, all kinds of Barbie world things happening that I've been enjoying.
Love that. Liz, what about you?
Yeah, big week for the Barbie fans. We really got everything this week, including like that vinyl drop. So Barbie really said like, we're giving you everything and then some. I, once again, May has not been my month, y'all, but I did read all of Six of Crows, and it was shocking to read a book that wasn't from AO3 that I had to pay real money for. It was also so short in comparison to the fics I read. I could not believe. I whipped through it in like 2 days.
Liz, who only reads epics, shocked at the length of a normal novel.
And I
She's at 11.
That's real though. That's really real because Liz has gotten me into much longer fics. She's bullied me into reading longer fics. And I'm currently reading The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I'm flying through it. I'm like halfway through. I've only read it in 2 sittings. I'm like, I feel like when you're endlessly scrolling, you don't realize how long you're reading, but when you have a physical book, you're like, well, this is going by very quickly.
Absolutely.
I just loved that it was phrased like a Florida Man headline. Local woman learns.
It's so true. If I can overshare on the internet for a moment, it also made me like reflect because I've seen so many videos talking about how good the Six of Crows book is. And it is. And it is. It is a good book. But the fanfic that I've read that's like caused me agony, caused me to be like, this is the greatest piece of literature I've ever read, versus reading that book. Like it was a great book. I wouldn't even put it in the top 10 books I've read. Like the plot was great. The characters are great. I'm excited to read the second one to see them grow and develop. Like I have no issues with them, but just the quality of writing that you can get for free, it's like it really made me pause. And the other thing that I'm going to overshare about, because I know this community will understand, is the things that people were excited to read about in this book were like level 1 of what AO3 can offer you. And that also made me really reflect. I mean, this is a book about teenagers doing a heist, but the way people talked about people falling in love and like relationships and who people were shipping, and the actual canonical book gave us crumbs. So I just had a lot of feelings around like, I need some people to go on AO3.com and get an account and just lose yourself to the incredible writing that exists there. But it was a great book. I enjoyed it. It made me reflect quite a bit. And I enjoyed something else this week. Hold on, I'm losing my spot. Oh, I enjoyed Ted Lasso. Oh my God, Ted Lasso this week was wild. And I'm getting more and more scared for the Emmys this year because it's been such a year for TV. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be one of the most exciting Emmys in a long time. And there's also a lot that I have not been enjoying this week, including Maddie Healy still being in our frame of reference when we talk about Taylor Swift. Like, he's got to go. It's awful that she's still with him. I'm so furious that this is all still happening and that no one's saying anything about it. And I have a lot of thoughts on that I've been trying to catch up on. So I'm just also putting that out there on our show. Like that whole situation's so disgusting to watch and it's not acceptable or excusable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, my love, other than White Collar, what else have you been enjoying this week?
The playoffs again. And this week was great because a team I wanted to win swept for the first time in franchise history. It's fine. I'm being real chill about it. The most chill. I didn't almost
so normal.
fight a customer yesterday over Florida's place in the Stanley Cup Finals. So that has been very exciting news.
Oh, you just muted yourself. No.
I've been listening to The Athletic, which is sometimes great and sometimes not great, but like never in the middle. But the amount of things I have learned, life-changing. So it's been a very good week for learning. I don't know. I feel like there were other things I put on here. Yeah, we're just gonna leave it there. Those things.
Cool. Great. Love that. Those have been all great things. Now, let's get into some things that maybe we want to just express our strong feelings about. Just maybe. This is, of course, our rant section. So this week,
God.
oh no.
No. Shit.
Every time, Liz.
Sorry.
Every
Sorry.
God.
Elizabeth,
Sorry. I don't know what's happening.
you're doing great. You're doing
There we
great.
go.
My favorite is that exact conversation happened last time. There was an
I know,
O, there
I
was an
know.
Elizabeth, and there was a like, I've got it, it's fine, I don't know what's happening. Like exactly in that order.
Stress.
All right. Before we jump into this, you all know what it is. We have 30 seconds each to rant about something, totaling 2 minutes. We're just gonna go down the list. But to kick it off, I am airing my personal beef with an emoji, and that's my rant for this week. Marissa?
I will be going to the Eras tour next week, and I have a lot to say about it.
I love that for you. Liz?
Thank you.
I have decided Sly's new job.
Oh!
And that's exactly what I wrote in the show doc. And that's all I'm going to say at this time.
Incredible. Alexis?
I am finishing my ranking of hockey team names. NHL hockey team names. Who knows? The AHL may be next. Who's to say? I also just realized which teams have to be on this list that I'm ranking tonight. And that is something that I should have realized last week, but I'm realizing it now. This is also a reminder. We're ranking off of 4 criteria, and that is ice-related names because it's hockey, goddammit. That is fire-related names because I was having a moment. That is names with cute mascots. And that is the Oilers. Those are our positive ranking scale. And we are going to get through this without a Senators breakdown.
I'm ready.
All right, let's kick it off. In case you all don't know, there is this piece of punctuation. This one. Oh, we can't see it because of the rants. Let me hide this real quick. That's an interrobang. I have strong feelings about interrobangs. In case you're wondering, that is an interrogative and an exclamation mark, which would equal a question mark, exclamation point, right? You would think. However, whoever the hell approved the emojis decided that this was appropriate.
I am going to the Eras tour next Friday. Chicago night 1. And let me tell you the struggles I have been through to try and come up with an outfit. This is like universe of Taylor Swift aside. I'm just talking about trying to pick a freaking outfit. I am an Evermore girly. Evermore and Debut are my eras. Do you know how hard it is to find an outfit that's Evermore or Debut era and is also cute? It's
Some
very
of us are
hard.
hopeless. Second rant. Some of us are hopeless and require documentation to do anything required of them. End of rant. Third rant. Some of us are hopeless and require documentation to do what's asked of them and have friends that are willing to build said documentation for them. And that is the role that Sly has always and will continue to play in this friend group / show. And if you did not see what Sly made for this week's episode to help us through it, it is truly a work of art.
Okay, first we have the Anaheim Ducks, and they are fine. They are a little confusing because they make me think of like the Mighty Ducks, but we're going to give them like a 5 out of 10. Then we have the Calgary Flames. This list is not a great one for me. And we're going to put the Flames at like a 7 out of 10, and no one is going to judge me, and no one is going to ask questions. Understood? Then we have the Oilers, and the Oilers get a 10 out of 10.
All right, let's get back to this. This is not an interrobang. If you would call this something, it would be a bang interro. That is an exclamation point and then a question mark. And my question is, we all know how rigorous of an approval process it is to get any sort of new emojis. And how the hell is there not one singular grammar nerd who is a part of this process?
Okay, I want to begin by commending JJ, who did go to the Eras tour and did do Evermore. It was a glorious outfit. It was not what I was looking for in my Evermore journey. The only things that came to me were like a big plaid coat, which like it's June in Chicago. I'm not doing that. Or like some witchy thing and it's June in Chicago and I'm not doing that. I want to look cute and be comfortable.
So I have to ignore what's happening in the private chat, but we'll tell you about it later. So Sly made a document called the Taylor Wong Cinematic Universe Reference Guide, okay? But it's not just a reference guide. It is the exact thing that I always look for on the internet that doesn't exist. Because if you want to watch an episode of a show and you want the context to go into it and enjoy it, you end up spoiling the entire episode for yourself. And you end up reading plot summaries and learning things that don't matter. Sly saved us all of that grief and made a doc perfectly catered.
Next, we have the Los Angeles Kings. Boo! 2 out of 10. Then we have the San Jose Sharks, which get like an 8 out of 10, mostly because there's that adorable child that really likes the shark mascot, and I think it's really cute. Then we have the Seattle Kraken, and they get a 9 out of 10 because Krakens are fantastic, but their mascot is really disturbing to me. And I don't get it. I really don't.
This is a crime against me specifically. But yes, I am outing myself as a grammar nerd. I like weird punctuation. I love an interrobang. They're one of my favorite things. And I just like, it breaks my heart every time I like want to use an interrobang. I just like type it out on my keyboard and I can't use the fun emoji because it looks dumb and wrong and I hate it and it breaks my heart.
So then I was like, okay, well, what are my like favorite songs from Evermore? The sad ones that have nothing cute associated with them whatsoever. So I was like, okay, what are the songs on Evermore that could be potentially cute? Gold Rush, sure, maybe. Champagne Problems. There was a second there where I was gonna dress up like a jilted bride, but that didn't work out. At this point, I'm so sad. I will not be wearing an Evermore outfit to the Eras tour.
So Sly perfectly catered a document to the exact episodes that we were watching and included things like visual references for characters and their backstories, but also catered it perfectly to this group and the information that they knew we would be looking for specifically when watching this. And there were numerous times watching 4.6 where there was an exact bullet point to the question I had in front of mine. And it was like Sly was reading my mind specifically. So I think Sly's new job should be building out these kinds of reference sheets for anything you could ever dream of. And you can pay.
Next, we have the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm looking at this thing, and it's a sea with a shark, so maybe that's what a Canuck was? I've had no idea. I thought it was like the Canadians thing all over again, where it was just some Canada thing I was never going to understand. But we're going to give them like a 5 out of 10. That's fine. And then we have the name of a team that I'm not even going to say on air because I dislike them that much. 0 out of 10.
Oh boy, I kind of just want to defer my entire time so Alexis can talk about how much they hate them so much. But yeah, no, to wrap up my rant, this is my on-air petition to whoever works in whatever office approves the freaking emojis and shit. Who let you approve that as the interrobang emoji?
So I will not be wearing an Evermore outfit. I'm sorry to say it. I did also say that I'm a debut girly, and I am, but I will not be dressing like it's 2006. I just will not be doing that. You can't make me do that. Teardrops on My Guitar is my favorite song. She already played it. Moving on. What I will be wearing is a secret, and you will have to wait until next Friday. You can find it on my public Pinterest page if you really want to know, though. It is a deep cut, and there is a bit associated with it. You'll just have to wait.
So I think everyone should pay Sly. If you ever want to just jump into the middle of a show or watch it sporadically, pay Sly to build these documents for you. And I think Sly could probably build out a website, or if we want to be really sophisticated, program an AI bot to make these for people and then charge people to use the AI bot. It would be very helpful. I like jumping into the middle of a show and not knowing anything and just watching a random episode here or there. Sly is the person that can fix all of the confusion for you with one simple document. The end.
Okay, so I have no more hockey teams to rank. So instead, I have looked up a list of news articles, and I'm going to rank those. So first, we have rumors about the Maple Leafs, the Oilers, and the Bruins. And that doesn't sound like an article I'm going to like to read, so we're going to give that a 3 out of 10. stay away from my besties. Then we have how to talk like a hockey player, which feels like something that definitely does not matter. Like it feels like that bestie that was surprised that there was like fighting. So that's going to get like a 3 out of 10 as well.
Oh, incredible. I'm so glad you indulged me on planning out your rants for an entire month. Thank you for doing that for me personally.
It was one of the best decisions of our marriage, and I stand by that.
Love that. Liz, thank you for the strong endorsement. For the record, we are anti-AI in this household, but I do appreciate job offers. So
we
hit me
should
up.
have a debate about that sometime. I've been eating up AI lately.
Okay. You can only take so many computer science classes until you fear for everything ever on the internet. And you know, that's where I'm at in life. So
Listen, that's valid. And redacted, the past month of my life, redacted.
uh-huh.
Liz is getting by any way she can right now.
Redacted.
That is so valid. We may or may not have a custom GIF in the group chat for every one of those redacteds, and it's great. But
Very
you know what is not redacted is what our topic of the show is. This week, we are talking about the one and only Taylor Wong's cinematic universe. And you might be like, I'm a 911 fan and I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. That's okay. Only I do. So the question is, what is the Taylor Wong cinematic universe? And that would be the now 5 episodes of 911 that have been written by the one and only Taylor Wong, which over a year ago, I did a whole rant about why Taylor Wong was the best writer on 911. And I have edited it together to play for you all, just to refresh and get a vibe of where I was coming at when I pitched this as my takeover episode. So I'm just gonna roll. It has written 3 episodes. She wrote Jinx, she wrote Defend in Place, and she wrote Dumb Luck. And they are such a masterclass in the range of writing. Okay, so when we look at what she's written, Jinx is one of the episodes with the most calls in the whole thing. It's busy. There's so many calls. It's funny. There's a lot going on, right? And then we have Defend in Place, which is one call, the entire thing. It's high stakes, high drama, tension, beautifully crafted. And then there's 514, which references and calls back to every key important moment in 911 that we connect to as fans, and it's done so well. And choose the 3 episodes we've seen from Taylor Wong shows that she knows what the show is about and why we love it, and that's why she's my favorite and arguably one of the best writers. Wow, I'm a mess when I'm trying to rant. I don't know how y'all sit through that. Anyways, so that is why I chose these episodes specifically. So we did watch 4-6, which is Jinx, 5-8, Defend in Place, 5-14, Dumb Luck, and then the extra credits were the 2 from this season, which was Cursed and Death in Texas, which I think only Alexis and I watched, and that's fine. No, Alexis didn't go back and rewatch. You told me that. That's my bad. Only I watched those. It's fine. I'm having a blast this week. So yeah, these were chosen purely based on the style and the structure that they represent within the show of 911 as a whole. As I mentioned that rant, like Jinx has a ton of calls, Defend in Place has 1 call, and then 514 is more like a mix of like the character focus and the call focus. So that was the vibe. Alexis, do you have anything you want to say about your 911 history before we jump into how we feel about the show?
I feel like everyone is aware of my 911 history because it happened on this show in real time. Basically, Sly said some stuff about it, and they sent me some edits, and now we're here.
now we're here indeed. And we're just gonna jump right into our roses and thorns here because, we all have strong feelings about things. We're just gonna talk about it. I'm gonna start with Marissa because I'm pretty sure I know what your strong feelings are.
Well, you can read it right there. They're very nice. My rose is that Angela Bassett did the thing. Slay.
Slay, yeah.
My thorn is that I kept being reminded that Angela Bassett did not do the thing, win an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is where Sly knows what I'm about to say, she is the only one that came correct. Angela Bassett is outacting everyone on screen all the time. That was my thorn.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alexis, that was a lot.
Unfortunately,
I'm not offended.
Okay.
the reaction to her not doing the thing actually did cause like a severe drop in numbers in the episode that aired the day after the Oscars. Fun fact. Yeah, there was a lot of things. There was another big event going on at the same time, but part of it was maybe partially the reaction. Anyways, that's not important. I'm just info dumping. Liz, how are you feeling?
You know what? I had such an experience with this. My rose is that I think I like 911 more than 911 Lone Star.
Thank God.
Which I didn't really have a reference point prior. I've seen some episodes of 911, but like the episode that I am most familiar with is the one I watched when it was airing live. And it's like her backstory. And it's like when she was a kid. And it's like that whole, the sister and that whole saga of events. And I really liked that episode, but that's not reflective of 911. So I was excited to kind of dig my nails into like how does 911 operate? I really enjoyed it. Can I tell a short story for my thorn?
Go for it.
I don't know if you guys had a chance to actually go into my notes, but my thorn is that I'm furious that Buck and Eddie aren't canon. And I had a huge moment with this when I was watching 4.6, and I'm going to read out what I put in my notes. When Buck and Allie, is that correct? Buck and Allie were talking off the top?
Allie?
Maybe it wasn't Allie. Buck and someone are talking.
Anna.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Allie is the girlfriend from season 2 of Buck.
So Buck's talking to someone off the top of the episode. I'm making a charcuterie board, so I'm listening to this whole conversation. Okay. I'm like, eyes are not on screen, but I know it's Buck, and he's talking to this woman, and I'm like listening to this conversation. And I was like, and this is an exact train of thought I had that I immediately wrote down verbatim as it went through my mind. I was like, Buck's got game. Wait, Buck's gay. Is Buck bi? Maybe Buck's bi. Maybe Eddie was Buck's bi awakening. Wait, that's fanon. This man is straight. Jesus Christ.
I would argue we are given enough textual evidence that indicates that Buck is canonically bi. However, they are not together, no.
So I had to pause the show. Because the thing that I am most familiar with from the 911 universe is Buck and Eddie should be together. By far. I get edits every day on my For You page. The free page is like, you're going to ship Buck and Eddie, even if you do not watch every episode of the show. So I was really struggling with the realization that I was watching a piece of canon that did not support the edits on my For You page. And this is after a week of reading a book where I was let down by some of the quality of the canon based on the edits on my For You page. So yeah, that was my thorn. My other thorn is that apparently I did not watch the correct episode. I've had such a day. I watched the correct first episode, and then somehow I didn't watch the correct second episode. But at least now I have a reference point for how great Taylor Wong is. And for that, I am grateful. I didn't really like the second episode I watched, but it really confirmed that Buck and Eddie should be together.
Yeah, love that for you. All right, Alexis.
I would also like to say, I think when we first started this 911 journey and we were doing like weekly 911 rants, Marissa found the Fox Espanol tweeted photo of Buck and Eddie like kissing, and there was a conversation about like, this is not canon and this is the photo I keep finding.
I was trying to make memes. I was trying to promote our show. And when you like Google Buck and Eddie, when you Google 911, the only thing that came up was like edits of them being gay together.
Facts.
But I'm having to look at my rose and thorn. My rose was looking at 911 through the lens of a specific creator. I think that's really interesting. And that is not something I would have done for this show unless my husband gently bullied me into it. So that was fantastic. And my thorn was, oh my God, I wanted to call her Lexi. Her name is not Lexi on this show. Ariel, what is her last name?
Kebble.
Okay.
It's on my reference guide.
Okay, Ariel Kebble, and what happened to that character and just all of that. And while that is not like super important to viewing the show through a Taylor Wong lens, I was reminded while watching these shows. So that made me sad.
On a very related note, my rose was Taylor Wong, love of my life. We'll get into that later. But my thorn was we watched 5/8, and I was reminded of the whole Brockman Dunbar debacle of him getting written off the show, and why. So yeah, I feel that. But yeah, let's hop into some discussions before we get to the quotes. So I want to talk about the structure of episodes on network serials, because that is kind of the thesis, the foundation for this takeover, especially within 911. We see 4 like main types of episodes throughout the course of the show. We see episodes that are super focused on the calls, on the emergencies, on responding to them, that kind of thing, which is like the Jinx episode. We see episodes that are more contained, like one big call, or like you also see these with like whenever there's an arc of like multiple episodes in the row dealing with one big disaster, those kind of episodes, which we saw in Defend in Place here. There's the mix of more call focused episodes and more character focused episodes that is more along the lines of Dumb Luck. And then you have the like very almost exclusively character focused episodes, which are like The Begins and a couple of the episodes we got within this past season, which I know JJ enjoys much more. On the spectrum of like character focused to call focused, I tend to lean more call focused, but some people really like the character. So for those, I guess this is mostly a Marissa question. For you going into the show with no like outside context to all of these types, how did you feel about the breakdown in the structure of the 3 different episodes you watched?
How did I feel about it? I don't know. I didn't really feel any particular way. I think it felt very natural to me. I think like there was a time in my life where I watched procedurals. I was a Bones girly. I had a SVU era. So I'm like familiar with the style, I think. But the thing that really threw me off is I remember Sly's Taylor Wong Cinematic Universe rant. I did not remember the content of it. And so I was like looking for a like overarching style of writing of like this writer does character really well, or this writer does like a fast-paced plot really well. And like by the third episode, I was like, I don't get it. And that was the point. It was supposed to be demonstrating a bunch of different skills at the same time. So once I understood that, I think like, I don't know, it's a really good sort of like example platter of like what to expect on this kind of a show. And I think looking at them all from one writer's perspective, like they feel pretty seamless, even though they are, you know, structurally or sort of like, I don't know, development wise, a little imbalanced. Like they all stylistically felt the same, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure. Liz, you watched Jinx, which was kind of a like one of a kind episode besides Cursed, which we also got from Taylor Wong. But how did you feel that compared to the second episode you watched?
So one thing that stood out to me, and I really had to sit on this thought, so much so that I didn't even put it in my notes because I really wanted to fully reflect on this before I actually said it out loud so it wouldn't be a statement with bias. But the immediate difference for me is the writing for the women in the show and how different it felt to me compared to the accidental other episode I watched, which was written by men. And I Googled it and was like, was it really that different? But it was. Like, it felt much more grounded in Taylor Wong's episode than it was in this other episode that I ended up watching, which was 4.8. And I wonder, I don't have enough like specific episode watch experiences where I go in knowing a woman wrote this to really say that like you notice when women write women, but certainly like you do notice when people are writing for like a community that they represent or are a part of, more so than when other people come in and like try and write the experience of others. And I was just looking at, as a reference point, like I was going through the Ted Lasso writing credits because in a different scope but similar point, you can really tell when the actor that plays Roy, Brett Goldstein, has written an episode. The humor is so specific. It is timed so differently. And the way that Roy is written, because that's the character he's playing, is also so grounded in a really specific way. And when you watch Brett Goldstein's other project, you see a lot of those same writing tropes carry over into the writing of Shrinking. So I found it curious when I was watching this. I felt like this episode had like some certain levels of groundings that like, oh, Taylor Wong like wrote this and you can see her own experience coming through in some of this writing. And then also like comparing it to the other episode, which I thought was written by Taylor Wong. When I was watching it, I was like, why does this feel so different? Like, why are the women sounding so like different? And the cadence doesn't feel right. And it feels a little bit more cliche. And then I found out it wasn't Taylor Wong. And I was like, yeah, that maybe does it. That maybe does it. And then I was thinking about it compared to Lone Star, which I'm definitely more familiar with in terms of writing over multiple episodes. And I think kind of watching it sporadically as I have has kind of helped me consider the writing, because I jump around so much and if I catch things or don't catch things, and you know, and it felt very different to how Lone Star is written and how they tackle like the actual things that they're responding to. It's so different in 911 to me than how Lone Star treats what they're going to, I don't know, the incidents or the calls that they're going to respond to. So that was also interesting to me to see like that specific take on like an episode that has so many calls that they're responding to. Like there's so many things that happen in it. Does that make sense? That was a lot of thoughts.
Yeah. No, that was great.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a really good episode of TV. And I also, because I wasn't watching, I missed some of the cues that would have indicated where a commercial was. I thought that was also interesting. I thought for sure I would catch like, oh, that was a segment and that was a segment, but it flowed really nicely, not knowing when those breaks were. I think that's also like, you can tell when you're watching cable TV when they're like writing to the minute and they're like, oh, this is the point where they're going to cut for a commercial. So let's fill 30 seconds, or like it doesn't feel properly timed.
That was something you brought up, I think in the Lone Star episode I did actually, that it like really felt like network television and you could tell where the commercial breaks.
were written to.
Were into. Yeah, that's so
100%.
interesting.
Yeah.
Alexis, oh, go ahead.
No, just super quickly. I didn't even like recognize. I have Hulu with no ads, brag. But like I didn't even like notice or like because I mostly watch streaming, I didn't even like think about where the like commercial breaks would be. And it didn't really feel like there were any of those like harsh cuts. However, I will say The Great on Hulu, which is an exclusively streaming show, now has built-in fade to black ad breaks. It's
weird.
I hate it. It was season 3 was not my girl. So sorry. That was just a tangential. I was like, oh, I didn't notice the commercial breaks on 911. I did on The Great. They're both Hulu shows, but like one is exclusively streaming and one is a network show that is also on Hulu. Whatever. Sorry.
No, that's so fascinating. And like when I was going through, there were parts where I think there's like an audio cue that sometimes I hear and sometimes I don't when it's like a cut to commercial, and I do instinctively just go dun 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 every time because it makes me giggle, and we love a bit. But yeah, I was just gonna ask Alexis, since you have all of the context of the show, how is it looking at like these specific episodes as like a frame for structure?
So I will say, first, when watching through, I had a tendency to contribute everything to Taylor Wong. And I was trying to figure out like, and by that I mean like acting, directing, the camera. Like I was like, it's all Taylor Wong. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And I thought it may be because I am typically a John Rogers girly, and John Rogers usually had his fingers in a number of pies. But I think it's because there is a episode that she does with her father, correct? Where her father directs it and she writes it.
Correct. So I actually have these written down in the notes here. So 5-8 Defend in Place was a Taylor and James Wong duo episode, as well as Cursed, which was one of the extra credits.
Yes,
were the two that they did together.
Okay, and I think that's what it was. So I applied that to all of them. The second is that I did go through the credits because there were a couple instances where I was like, there was something about like this line or this conversation that doesn't match with like the flow of the episode. And I think there are some episodes that Taylor Wong was the story editor on, like wrote and was the story editor for. And then there was maybe an episode where she was not.
So when I was going through, she is credited through season 3 through season 6, and her title changes every year as she like progresses. So season 3 she was a script editor, season 4 she was a staff writer, season 5 she was a story editor, and then season 6 she's credited as executive story editor. Throughout like all of those seasons, and then these 5 are like the ones that she gets the written by
credit on. So I think that's interesting because I'm suspecting that there are some differences kind of based on what role she had outside of writing the episode at that time. But to answer your broader question, I mean, these are episodes that really stand out to me. I specifically, the Jinx Cursed duo. I mean, I guess it's not a duo, but the Jinx Cursed duo. And
it's so a duo.
And Defend in Place are like episodes that I really think about and really remember. And I think it is due in part to their break from the serial structure that we get in 911 a lot. That kind of like typical network episode structure. These just have a little bit more pizzazz, which I appreciate. I do think it's interesting that we got the Jinx Cursed duo. So I'm interested to see what Taylor Wong does in future involvement in the show. Like if we get another reference to that, or if there's maybe we get like another pair of episodes. I just think that's really interesting, especially because that is so integral to how we understand Eddie's character. So
Yeah, especially with I know Curse was a bonus episode, but it's really interesting to see what the callbacks to Jinx are in Curse, especially like in Jinx there's an offhanded line about Abuela Isabel going to see a curandera. And that's just like played off as a whatever. And then in Cursed, it becomes a whole like storyline, like this curandera like preying on Abuela after her husband died, and it's this whole thing about like Eddie and his like mistrust of like people and whatever. But yeah, the interaction between those episodes is really interesting.
yeah, and I'm now tempted. I've always been tempted to do a 911 spreadsheet. And I have done some. There are 911 spreadsheets in the existence of my life, but I'm interested to do one that tracks. I mean, those are both episodes as well where we get Spanish from Eddie. It's a little bit of Spanish, but both of those we get Spanish and we get a reference in both to kind of his cultural history, which is not something we get consistently throughout the show. I mean, we get it enough to be noticeable, but it is definitely not something we're picking up like every week. So I'd be interested to see which writers tap into that and which writers don't.
Yeah, because we also got it in Death and Taxes when he calls his parents to go visit or whatever.
Yeah, and I think the phone call at the end of Cursed to Abuela is the beginning of that phone call. Yeah.
Wow, great times. She loves the phone call. She loves the telenovela. You know, all good things.
Don't we all?
Don't we all?
This is a telenovela household.
Can I jump on Alexis's earlier point about the role the writer plays? I think you were getting to something that's really timely, Alexis. Like, it's interesting to consider someone. I was just looking at Taylor Wong's fandom, 901 fandom page, like the progression from writer to executive story editor, and like the episodes that Taylor's written on, and like the credits she has on the show are like so extensive, right? And it's so cool to be doing this episode of our show, like talking about the importance of a writer, not just in the writing aspect of a show, but in their role on set, the impact they have on character development across seasons during the writer's strike. So I just think this is a really cool time for us to be talking about this. And it is, you can see the impact a writer has when they have, you know, presence on set, a relationship with the director, whether it's like a literal relationship or just a good working relationship with the people around them, and can have impact on, well, actually, I wrote it with this intent, or, oh, we want to rewrite that line, go with this instead, or, oh, I think it's really important that we hear Spanish from Eddie, so I'm going to take it on to make sure that I include those things when I have a chance to write for it. You know, it's like writers do so much more, and the strike's really showing us the extent that a writer does to like produce anything that we watch or see. So just shout out to the writers. We stand with the writers, absolutely. And like, this is for Taylor Wong and all the work that she's done to make 911. What's the very specific word I'm looking for? To ground 911 in something real.
Yeah.
Except for Buck and Eddie being canon. Taylor Wong, you can do so much more for us there, but that's bigger than one
Taylor Wong is doing a lot for us, especially in Dumb Luck. She gave us so much money in that episode. But yeah, we have a whole point here about the different types of writing responsibilities, and like looking at I discussed previously how her credit evolved every year as she like grew and got like more responsibility. But I'm not like super invested in like the TV cultural like etc. So I would be really interested, Marissa and Liz, like what those mean to you, like those different roles in the writer's room, not looking at like getting the written by credit on an episode, but like in general, like as you rise up through the ranks, have you noticed any writers that you've like tracked a similar arc with, or just like what are your thoughts on like writing for network serials in general?
Yeah, that is I mean, well, to go back to the writer's strike for a hot second, that was the thing that I was thinking about when you were discussing her sort of growth over the seasons, is like the ability to grow and gain that credit season after season is like literally one of the points that is being negotiated right now, because studios are trying to get rid of that and trying to ignore, you know, previous responsibilities, previous credits, because it comes with a pay increase in it's like getting a promotion. And so it comes with a pay increase. And studios are trying to get rid of that. Like, you could be a staff writer, you could be a executive story writer, a story editor on one show, and then be staff writer at the next. And that is like a huge pay bump. But to your question, I am a fiend for The Good Place, the podcast, which had writers on for almost every episode to discuss the episodes that they had written. And because the show had 4 seasons, it had mostly a consistent writer's room for all 4 seasons. And in season 4, I believe, the writer's assistant from season 1 was like a full staff writer who got a written by writing credit, an episode. And I think she had an episode in season 3 even while she was still a writer's assistant. And like her episode in particular, they really discussed like the path of a writer in a writer's room and how, you know, responsibilities sort of depend on showrunner to showrunner rather than like the exact title of your role. But like how it is basically a ladder and a platform that is built out for you to sort of move up the ranks season by season. Did that?
So cool.
Okay,
we
great.
love a behind the scenes podcast.
It's such a good podcast.
It's so good. An example that came to mind for me, and I'm looking at the credits here because I want to do this justice. One of the best examples of like someone who works across all roles on a set and is most famous for their writing is probably Dan Levy on Schitt's Creek, of like a modern example, because this was like his baby, right? He developed the show, pitched the show with his father, but like he is the one from leading the writer's room to directing on set to acting. Like his hand is everywhere in developing Schitt's Creek. And it's really beautiful how the show got to a place, especially in season 5, where yes, Dan Levy is still the head writer on multiple episodes, but there's such consistency and understanding of where we are going in the communication between that writer's room that you can't tell this is a Dan Levy episode, this is a somebody else episode. And it's a place that you get so privileged to get to when you get 3 seasons under your belt, 4 seasons under your belt. And so many shows don't even get a chance to get to that point where they can like really map their ending and find the characters. Alexis Rose is such a good example of a character that started as a trope and ended up with an Emmy win because they had enough time and space to develop her once season 6 hit. It was like Alexis making you cry every episode with her growth and who she was and things you would never expect from her from season 1. And that's another thing about the writer's strike that's worth noting is like when shows get canceled because of streaming and the lack of transparency around streaming numbers, like we don't know what could happen and how good things could get if shows had enough space to breathe like that. And that's one of the cool things about the 911 universe. It has had so much space to grow the plots and listen to feedback and build a community in the writing and the set that you can go do the backstory for Angela Bassett's character and give a whole episode to that, even though it isolates everybody else that's in this cast and it still works in the context of the show and what they're building to. The other thing that I would throw into this, which is like a little bit of an off the beaten track thought, but in Canada, this is a huge problem in Canadian TV, and it's talked about extensively how, and not just TV and film as well, there is such a need for you to champion your own shit. And you have to take on multiple roles. So when I interviewed Anthony Shim at the Canadian Screen Awards, Anthony Shim is one of the most prolific Canadian filmmakers on the up and up. He's in his 30s. Rice Boy Sleeps was a film that he was there with, and it's like one of the most profound films you'll ever see. And he wrote it, directed, like had all of these roles in the process of making that movie. And I asked him, like, why does Canada produce so many writers who are not just writers? They're all these different things, like these multi-talented creatives. And he was like, it's not that Canada produces these because we're a credit to the art. It's because we don't have a choice. Like, we have to be. We don't have the luxury of focusing on just one piece of the craft and making a career out of it. You have to be able to do all of the above to get your project made. So I think that that's something when you look at Canadian TV, even someone like Dan Levy, who's a Nepo baby of one of the Canadian greats and was able to get his show greenlit, still had to take on so much on set to make his show happen because there was not funding to bring in other people. There was not the ability to like expand out scope. And when you look at American television and network television, it's so much different because a Fox writer's room, you are an assistant writer. Period. Yeah. And like you're trying to get to other roles on set and you're trying to like progress your career. In Canadian TV, it's like you want to get your show made, you better be ready to do 7 jobs and get paid for one or half of one because like there is nothing to support you. So that's something that like when I watch like to me, I really notice it when I'm watching American network television because it's so evident that these huge flagship shows have like not a huge team, but definitely a different style of being able to make their television than what Canadian TV has to offer.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
a very long rant.
And I will be very interested with this show in particular because of the whole budgetary issues and them transferring over to a new network under the same umbrella, but still how that will impact what we're seeing on set and in the room.
I had one more thought. Sorry, I think this is an interesting point for our show. Let's talk about Kevin Feige. Because I think this is also a really interesting point in where you can see writers and how many levels of separation from executive producers, right? Like you hear constantly from writers in the MCU, oh, well, the story is like much different than like the scripts that we had in draft 1. Like the way we had these things in the script that got like abandoned or like didn't make it or got cut in the cutting room floor because they wanted the story to go a different way. So I think it's also so cool to see someone like Taylor Wong who has such a big presence in her story and then the way that they make it and then what we see versus I think about Marvel TV made for streaming more, so like a little bit different, but you can see Kevin Feige's hand come in and say, nope, we're taking that out and we're throwing it away. Nope, we're taking that out and we're throwing it away.
I would be interested on that note, looking at these episodes in particular, actually, I would be curious if you noticed a difference, probably Marissa, in the season 4 episode versus the season 5 episodes, because the showrunner for season 4 was Tim Minear, and he was showrunning both Lone Star and OG as like the one person. And at the start of season 5/3, he got co-showrunners who kind of took over, and he had like very little hands in season 3 at all, or season 5, sorry, at all for OG.
Yeah, I did notice a difference. I liked season 5 much more.
Interesting, because Kristen got a lot of flack when she started.
I mean, I don't know anything about these characters other than what I watched, but like structurally as a television show, I liked season 5 more.
That's so interesting. I love that. That's so
a dedicated hand watching what's happening versus one person trying to make every decision. Right?
Yeah. Maybe they were the wrong decisions, but they were clearer
but
decisions.
They were more focused decisions.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. Alexis, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I will say I come at this a little more naively, right? I think we've all established that my media literacy is more an on the streets education than it is an academic one. But I think the conversation around showrunners specifically is interesting because there are a couple other shows that I know of offhand where the same thing has occurred, right? he who shall not be named, who was involved in Buffy, I know at one time was show running both shows and then tried to make that transition. And there was a lot of conversation about the transition year and the year after, and it kind of how, well, like those decisions were clear, but they weren't the decisions that we wanted, right? Like the same type of thing. It also happened with J.J. Abrams on Fringe, the Lost to Fringe to Further show pipeline. And I think what is also interesting about those is, for better or for worse, the showrunners of like the original, right? So Buffy's original showrunner and the Lost Fringe original showrunner, like those were men that were very connected to certain aspects of those projects, like personally, right? Like J.J. Abrams and his, long love for sci-fi was very like in those projects. And I think when Tim Minear, despite his hatred for passing the salt, has conversations about 911, there is a very personal connection to the certain dynamics that are happening on the show, right? So I think it is interesting to look at that connection and how themes that he was personally invested in and evolved during those first 4 seasons and how they have maybe not evolved afterwards. In contrast to what is happening on Lone Star in seasons that he's showing. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
absolutely. Also, JJ was chiming in here. Loved Marissa's point. Good structure, not good decisions. I think that's a great summation of season 5 of OG.
That's kind of a fun question. Like, what do each of us prefer? If you have to pick between a solid structure or like quality decision makings, but the structure lacks.
Oh man, I'd say throw structure out the window.
Make good decisions, right?
I would rather watch a well-made show that I didn't necessarily like as much than be distracted by all of the things that I would have changed to make it a better show.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
I think the reason why I think this episode or that question's so interesting is you can see it across Ted Lasso this season. The episodes that are really well structured, and the episodes that are not, right? And one of the things about this season of Ted Lasso is they reshot like a whole whack of this season. They like went back and they redid a whole bunch of it. And you can tell the plots that like, oh, it's not.
Man, it's weird.
And
it's really weird.
There's one standout episode in the middle of the season when they're in Amsterdam. And it's just like, how do you make an episode that is the perfect combination of great structure and great decisions, and you have everything else? So
yeah.
Alexis, what do you think?
I'm going to be really honest. I watch TV more for character than I do for anything else. And I feel like that's closer to the good decisions piece. Like regardless of the structure of a show, if I'm invested in the character, I don't really give a shit. And I think that there are certain places in 911 specifically where it is clear that presumably straight white woman was making the decisions, and that doesn't necessarily match up with the most appropriate character choices. And that was more distracting to me than any sort of structural change. That may be a hot take, but
I mean, I'm with you there. So
I don't know like these characters enough to care.
That's valid.
That's so valid.
Meanwhile, I do not know enough about Buck and Eddie, and I will defend them and every single morning tries to fuck with them.
Yeah, I am changing the doc on the fly. Sorry to distract everybody. Yeah, on that, let's jump into some of our notes on the different elements we see within these episodes. Something that really stood out to me looking at just these group of episodes is that Taylor Wong really loves to start at the end and will like take whatever like the end scene of the episode is, and that's where we start, and then we go from there. And that's something really interesting because I always like notice when it happens because it's a little bit of a change on kind of the typical structure, but I never put it together that it was mostly Taylor Wong doing this.
Mm.
So that was an interesting observation to me this go around. Liz, you had one point about the
Yes, but I want before we jump on, I want to talk about what you just said, because I think that
Okay, sure.
I have a bit of a prediction for where TV is going, because something that's changing in social media best practice, right? There's this whole, so obviously we on this screen are content creators, right? Like we are people that consider ourselves to have been or currently still are content creators in some capacity. I have this Hannah Montana life of like being a content creator who is with all of us on kind of like the cutting edge of how social media works, and working a professional career, not necessarily personally, but like my LinkedIn, right? Like I'm constantly exposed to these like best practices for X, and it's just so behind, right? And in the past, like 2 years ago, there was this huge pivot around like, hey, you should be prioritizing videos. No shit, you shouldn't. But anyway, so, you know, people are on the video train, people are understanding the importance of video. And you're seeing this change now in what we do, which is like, don't bury the lead. Start with your hardest hitting shit. Give the people the most valuable thing up front, and then take them through the story or the context or the whatever that gets them there. But if you don't show the most shiny thing first, people are going to scroll away.
So interesting to me, because I took a broadcast journalism class, and it was very much a traditional like news, like broadcast, like structure, right? And that is exactly like the way content creation, video best practices are now becoming, is basically how you write a script for like a news story for broadcast TV.
Yeah, 100%. And I think network television, right? You have network television that's like Abbott Elementary, Parks and Rec, The Office, where they do bury the lead. Part of the joy of watching that show is they're like, today we're going on a field trip to the Smithsonian. And then the reason why you watch the episode is not because they're at the Smithsonian. They could be in Mars for all we care. It's like the characters or whatever. It happens 40 minutes in, etc. But I think we're going to start seeing more and more and more and more network television, which I would consider more on the scale of like coming to terms with how younger viewing audiences like to consume their content, doing this Taylor Wong style of start with the ending and show us where we're going to end, and then take us back and work us there. So that way when we're like flicking through the channels, or, you know, it's prime time and we're like seeing if this is going to be a good episode to watch, we see the thing and then we like exit and go back to the beginning and restart. Because if we don't, and we're getting like starting with a really boring, like, oh, like, welcome, we're back at the station, here's my coffee, like, we're like, we have 3 seconds of that and we're gone, and I'm watching FBI.
I think something that's interesting, kind of going off that, Liz, is there's been a lot of psychology-based research over the past 3 or 4 years about how there are generational shifts in attention, right? So where our parents' generation had a longer attention span, you can argue as to why, but had a larger attention span and valued routine, traditional network shows worked better for that, right? Like they had more attention to get through the whole show, and it was going to look the same every week. We're now in a point where our generation and those younger than us are working in 10-minute chunks of attention. So if you are not giving me something interesting or to latch onto within that 10-minute frame, neurotypical people included, we're going to move on after that 10 minutes. We're no longer going to focus on it, right? And so I think when we're looking at shows like Abbott Elementary, part of the bit, right, is that we do know how it's going to end. It's not a surprise, right? The show is done the same way every week. So I may be starting at the beginning, but I know while we're at the Smithsonian, somebody is going to get like snot on the Mona Lisa, and there's going to be like an argument between these two teachers, and like the mob is going to show up, right? And then it's going to But it's only like with ads, like 20 minutes long? I mean, that's a pretty short show. So like my attention can handle it. But when I'm looking at something like 911, which is a full 45-minute show, if there's not something different to connect me into that, I'm going to give up after 10 minutes. So I think that this kind of starting from the middle or starting from a different place is one of the reasons that these episodes really stand out, because they have that kind of attention grabbing point to the story. And I would say that it's a credit to Taylor Wong that these are crafted incredibly well. I think there's like we were talking about White Collar earlier. I think one of the tenets of like a heist drama is that you do start in the middle. But those are typically done in such a way that like we also know where it's going to end, right? I think Taylor Wong has a tendency to use that piece of storytelling or story framing in a way that is still really interesting and kind of unique.
One of my favorite things about 911 is that like about every 10 minutes, quote unquote, you get the screen. 911, what's your emergency? I'm like, oh shit, here we go again. Like it's like it does reset my clock every time that happens. And they do it at least once in episodes. But like I feel like multiple times in the episode, it's like, oh my God, there's something else, and we're going here, we're going there. And like it's almost like the show saves itself because they have that bit. Like, oh, okay, we still have to resolve this shit with Buck and Eddie, or we never will, who knows. But like if we're feeling this a little long, like, okay, we're gonna like, there's a new fire, there's a new gas leak, there's a cat in a tree, someone got a champagne cork in their esophagus, like let's go fix that. Like you can come up with something cool to move us and then keep the longer thread running. And like how many shows actually have a bit like that they can just be like, well, this is kind of getting dry, let's figure out the weirdest shit they could go help and then continue the conversation there.
And the fun thing about those is that when you get that 911, what's your emergency, the response, the color is always a very like absurd like clickbait title type response for the emergency, and it's like not necessarily like what an actual call would be, but it's
never
okay,
something that sounds realistic.
You're hooked you for you to continue the call.
That was like my favorite thing about what I was watching is they were like, I don't know why my windows are like, why do you sound like that? Like if you're calling 911, you're probably hysterical. You're not like, oh, like it's like, are you clowns? Is this clown school calling 911? Sorry, I just have a lot of feelings.
I will say, okay, so I have 2 points. One is a structural point, and I think it is, and I think of shows like NCIS, right? Like older shows that try to do something similar. Like NCIS had that photo thing that was became a trope, right? But it wasn't really catchy because I knew it was just going to be a photo of like what I was going to see, right? And I think this 911 call is kind of an evolution on that type of storytelling. The second thing I will say, I think I've talked about this on here before, but I'm part of a long-term research project that looks at training in different first responder spaces. And that means that I get to shadow at dispatch quite often. And those are some of the funnest days of my life. I think the problem I have with the 911 dispatch calls, other than the fact that they're all being answered in English, is that nobody gives any information off the bat, right? This is your PSA. If you're calling 911, you need to have the address of where you were calling from. Even if you're in a state or a locale where they can GPS track you, you need to have an address, and you need to have a 1-sentence summary of the event that has occurred. However, that never happens. Like the number of times that the first time I shadowed at dispatch, the first call that came in was, I think I'm stuck in an elevator, but I may just be drunk. And I was like, oh my God, 911 is more accurate than I thought it was, right? Like 5 calls in, we were at like, well, I went to the word that was used was mental hospital, but I went to the mental hospital a couple months ago and now I'm done, but my car is gone. And I think my friend stole it. And it's like, what? What's the make and model of your car? I don't remember. Like, so I will give like 911 credit for capturing the things that happen at dispatch that maybe would be more suitable not to be occurring.
Which is really interesting and leads back to something I've discussed a million times on this show, and I am going to bring it up again because I think it's important, is that the role that emergency shows have in informing the general public and the cultural consciousness of how to interact in these situations. And I will go back to it a million times. If you don't show good CPR on TV, people remember bad CPR more than they remember what they took in their one required CPR class 15 years ago. And like, so one of the things that maybe if we ever get that call that we keep asking from Fox or ABC or whatever, we can add to is how to call 911.
Man, I gotta tell you, I found myself yelling so much at the TV of like my kindergarten safety town knowledge of like what to do during a fire, how to call 911. I was like coaching that 8-year-old kid through this fire. I was like, you can do this. You took fire safety. You know what to do.
Oh, the kid.
I think I might be the only person that remembers like all of Safety Town.
Oh no, we were all traumatized. We were all traumatized.
Oh, I was not traumatized. I was
maybe it's a
greatly
Canadian
informed.
thing.
I learned a lot and I still remember it.
Marissa was like, I am not traumatized. I am now prepared.
Thank you very much. I know how to stop, drop, and roll.
I believe it. I do have to say, I'm reflecting on myself within this conversation, and I think I owe an apology to the people of 911 calling in their 911 calls, because I did within the past year call in a 911 call because I was looking out my window and there was a car on fire kind of by the intersection, and we have a lot of emergency services not far, and I wasn't hearing anyone going. So I was like, red flag, that's a car on fire. And that's where the fire people are. And there's nothing happening. So I was like, I'm going to call and make sure that like someone called this in. So I call 911 and they're like, 911, what's your emergency? And I was like, hello, I'm looking out my window and there's a car on fire. Like I was like,
at that point, just call the non-emergency line. Like,
well, it was not a non-emergency. It was a car on fire.
But if you're calling the emergency line, you have to act with urgency.
Correct.
The urgency was there in heart and not in tone.
Yeah, the message was urgent. The voice was, thank you for calling Air Canada. You are caller 1002.
Your call is important to us.
And this is the last story I will tell about dispatch, but I lived in a very small town for a couple of years, and there was no emergency like dispatch services. It was volunteer.
Oh my
and
God.
yeah, and there was an incident that I can't explain without getting us banned, but there was an incident occurring and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to call. And I called and I was prepared for 911, what's your emergency? And I got, hey, how you doing? Can I do anything for you?
Oh no.
And I was like, is this 911? And she was like, yeah, how can I help you? And I was like,
Right.
well,
Redacted. Yeah.
Incredible.
That's
Well,
so
that sure sounds like a hero to me, which leads us to our next point. Let's talk about the use of a hero montage. I don't know who put this down. Somebody else take it away, please.
that would be me.
Okay, great.
Here's the thing. I put things in the doc because I want you all to talk about them, not because I actually have thoughts. But
Me too.
I am a sucker for a hero montage, whether it be for people or for fire trucks, or just a montage of like events happening. And I particularly like them, I think, in 911 because we don't get them often. As often as I'd like. And I think especially in an episode like Jinx, where like the bit is that you're doing a lot of calls, kind of doing that in montage form is really interesting. And I just really, I don't know, there was something about those that was like visually interesting and compelling and like locked me in that I just really appreciated across the Taylor Wong episodes.
So can I ask a question here? When we're talking about the hero montage, as someone that does not always Okay, as someone that often watches shows involving not heroes, okay, we're talking about the Cas Breckers of the world. Like I'm not getting hero montages in my day-to-day. So putting that out there. And then also as someone that is not as familiar with this side of television, and I'm more of like the comedy side where like hero montages don't exist. Are we talking about an instance involving a montage to explain how an instance is being resolved, or like a person and a montage of them doing things?
I would say an instance, but I think Taylor Wong does like the 118 are heroes. Like, so we have a montage of them doing, maybe a better phrase would be a competency montage, because that is what is actually occurring. It's like we're seeing lots of little snippets of these people do really interesting parts of their job really well. Or the fire trucks driving in a really cool way.
Yeah. So there are things that like in general, like take the hero and the genre out of this for a second. And Marissa, I would love for you to chime in with like some other examples too, because I know you're gonna jump in on this or know this train of thought. Like I live for a montage because they are camp. Montages are camp. Marissa's like, yes, finally, montages are camp. Montages are
waiting for what you were gonna say, and then I was like,
it's the theater kid of writing.
Yep.
Like a montage is as dramatic as it can possibly get. And then you throw in hero complex and it's like camp. I love it.
It's also so easy to write because all you have to write is we see various scenes of characters X, Y, and Z doing A, B, and C. And then the editors have to figure it out. And like the writer can pitch their ideas of what those would be. But like if it's from previous episodes, the writers have to go and find, or the editors have to go and find those and figure it out. Or like it's up to the AD to figure out what those montage moments are going to be so they can plan to shoot them. Like it's the easiest thing for a writer to do. And it has such good payoff. Like
and it's the hardest shit to produce on a set.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck, how many angles of this are we gonna want? I don't know what the like. It's like you're taking days to film a montage of 12 scenes with probably a lot of extras, a lot of costuming, and every piece of the montage needs to be filmed from 7 different perspectives.
But it's such effective storytelling. It's such effective storytelling. Like, not to talk about The Good Place again, but I will because it's just such a well-made television show. They love a montage of like a wake. It's a very sort of like Groundhog Day, I guess. The other Jerry Maguire, whatever, where like you wake up and your day starts and you blah, blah, blah. Repeat. And that, you know, is a montage in the sense that it is short bursts of moments that are effectively telling a story without a lot of dialogue. But then you also have the like pare down a scene into just quick bursts so you can like get to the next moment of storytelling, which is like, you know, your makeover montages, your like
we love a makeover montage. Princess Diaries.
School day montage. Like you go to this class and then you open your locker and then you go to this class and like I love a montage, y'all.
Sly, is there a montage from the 911 universe that really like stands out to you as, or you could say like a couple or like a character that gets like good montages?
This one's okay. I do have a favorite montage, and it's gonna be a deep cut. It's in 2-8 Buck actually, and it's the montage that happens after we see the shot of, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make everybody who knows 911 emotional. We see the scrapbook from Thomas and Mitchell, and then it's like montage of their relationship. And it's beautiful and heartbreaking and just like this like gut-wrenching, like emotional. You get to see these like they're old and they're gay together and they're so happy, and then you know the tragedy of losing. Oh god.
Affectionately, fuck you.
I deserve that. So to answer your question, my favorite montage is in 2-8.
Okay.
But that's not the point.
I think also like the beauty of montages is like they take so much work and it's so much production business, but you get so like such effective and quick storytelling that like there's no other way to do that. Like it would take 20 minutes to cover everything if you went like scene by scene with full dialogue in real time. And oftentimes I find that a montage, depending on what the like topic is, like can actually further your emotional investment more than like watching those scenes in full. If that
I'm
makes
curious
sense.
what our feelings are on the two different montages that I can remember off my head. The I'm gonna call it the competency montage from Jinx of them doing all the different calls versus the ending. I guess this would be more of like a hero montage of Defend in Place where they're like getting everybody out of the hospital, like how those two compare.
Well, I can compare it to 4-8 because they had a huge montage that I hated, but I also really did it. In 4-8, at the end of the episode, the vaccines are thawed and they have to give out like a fuck ton of vaccines in like 2 hours, and they set up vaccine.
And you get that beautiful shot of Taylor Kelly with her curls in the front and the pin straight
That's
hair.
what I was gonna say. That is my major beef with that episode.
Oh my god.
I have a lot of beef with that montage because I get they were trying to do a get vaccinated moment. Okay, I don't have an issue with that. It was like 3 minutes long.
Ooh, that's a poorly
It was
done
excessive.
montage.
It was a 3-hour montage for something that took place over the course of 2 hours is too high of a percentage. It either has to be
Yeah.
something that's happening in such a chaotic way that it's like a detail, like boom, boom, boom,
Mm-hmm.
or it's like taking the like over the course of 5 hours for something to happen, right? So it's like passing of time. This was 3 minutes of repetitiveness to a sad song. I don't vibe with that kind of montage, but I understand why they did. I understand it. I don't disagree with it. I disagree with the length of it. So anyway, I can't compare to the conversation you proposed. So now I will back out.
I really liked the montage in Jinx. I found it to be probably my favorite part of the episode. I just like thought it was the most entertaining bit. I guess I would say that Defend in Place is also a montage, but it's from a very different perspective. It's like Jinx is like getting a lot of business done very quickly and just like moving through the beats, whereas Defend in Place is like building emotional tension through like little moments. So they have very different goals, and I think like what they are attempting to accomplish like works for both of them, but they're I don't know how I would compare them because I think they're just very different.
That was what I was getting at was
Great.
how do you feel like they achieved the different ways they were trying to? The
I
different
think
things they
they
were trying to
achieved
accomplish.
it.
Yeah, cool, great, love it.
Something that I think is really important in network television, right, is people not talking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like we get like network television is all people talking all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not to bring it back to White Collar again, but the pilot of that show opens with like no dialogue for a good couple minutes.
I love that.
And I was obsessed. I was like, this is great for me personally.
I think montages are like a very necessary element of good network television because we require seeing characters not talking for them to feel relatable and real.
I would love for you to show, not tell, just once in your life, network television.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that's my final thought.
No, you're totally right.
Incredible. I'm gonna throw it right back at you then. Your point about talking down the villain.
Yes. So in 4-6, which we all watched, Jinx. Yeah?
Yes, we did.
We did do that.
Who was it? Buck that was in
No,
No, it was Eddie.
Eddie was on the radio.
Remember, it was an audio experience for me, so that's why I really picked up on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized when you were talking about the beginning of Jinx, you were talking about Anna getting treated for the burn, and the reason I was so confused is because you said Buck so confidently.
bad.
And
It
that
was also
definitely
Eddie.
Great. I'm so glad that I do not know the difference between them.
Well,
Clearly,
she
I really
started
thought I
with
did.
Buck and Allie, which is a thing that occurs, but she
Yeah,
knows
Buck and
that
Allie,
in any of the
canonical
episodes
couple.
that she watched, and I was like, "Dear God, where did you end up?"
I decided to have my own watch party. I picked my own episodes. No, I'm kidding. I really tried. But Eddie, who we all watch, because this is an episode we can all talk about. I'm kidding. I'm having a great time listening to you guys talk about this other one. I want to go watch it. Okay. He does this speech to like the villain of the episode.
Dude who stole the fire truck because he wanted to be a hero. Yeah.
Who, it's really important that, remember, this was an audio experience for me. So the entire time I was imagining it was Rob Lowe. I could not see him because I was making a charcuterie board and cutting pepperoni. So in my head, it was Rob Lowe doing this the whole time. But I digress. He gives like the speech, right? Like, you and me can relate to each other. Stop doing the bad thing you're doing. Blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, I don't know, maybe I will because you've convinced me. And that's such a trope of this genre to me, right? So I wanted to hear, I don't know what we call this moment, right? But it is such a thing. So a
hostage negotiation.
Yeah, it's like it's a negotiator.
Yeah. And it always happens in like the climax of the episode, right? In fact, I would say it often is the climax of the episode, is this good guy extending an olive branch to bad guy to try and make them stop doing their thing, and it does or does not work. So what is our opinion on it as like a trope? I'd love to hear from Sly and Alexis if you have examples of like this that stand out in your mind for
oh boy do I.
Good, bad, whatever. And then I also want to know, I feel like these walk a super, super, super fine line of being cheesy, right? And being effective. And like, I think scoping to Marvel for a second, there's some really good examples of this in the Marvel universe that I don't find are that cheesy. Like Black Panther has a few of these that are really like hit you in the gut, like you feel it, like it makes you emotional when you watch it. And then obviously Black Panther is a very different experience from 911 network television. But yeah, like what is the line of what makes it cheesy versus good? So
I have two that immediately jump out to me, and they are not in any of the episodes I made y'all watch. So only Alexis will have context for this one. But Chimney and the bomber in 4-3 that he has to talk down, the janitor, where he's telling all of the secrets that he's trying to keep. That one, arguably not well done, cheesy, does not work for me. I'm not a fan. However, in the hostage episode in season 5, it's cell block 911. I don't remember what the number is. Buck and Eddie get taken hostage by people escaping a jail in the ambulance. And
the movie Ambulance starring Jake Gyllenhaal.
Correct. And in that, Eddie has to talk down the dude who's escaping jail because he's trying to donate his heart to his son so his son can live. I thought that was a solid talk down moment in the back of the ambulance.
I have the opposite opinion, but before I explain it, I want Marissa to go first.
Okay. My issue with the one in Jinx is that it all happens too fast. It's too much of a pretty bow on the end of like the worst day imaginable. It's just like we've had 36 calls or whatever, and like this has been the most chaotic day, and we never got to eat our mac and cheese and blah 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 blah, and the episode is ending in 5 minutes. Oh well, guess we better wrap it up with the solution to all of our problems. Yay! It just doesn't
I do want to imagine that you're referring to Eddie being the solution of all problems and not what he says, but please continue.
Sure, you can imagine whatever you want. I can't control your brain.
I was imagining that the mac and cheese that didn't exist in that episode, because I think it was lasagna, or was it mac and cheese?
It was baked mac and cheese.
Was it baked
Yeah.
mac and cheese? I would like to imagine
It's
that
not Lasagna Gate. I did not make you watch
Okay.
the Lasagna Gate episode.
I just saw cheese and pasta, and those, are the same
Marissa
thing in my
would
mind.
never misidentify pasta on this show. Especially mac and cheese.
I have never
That's
had
real.
baked mac and cheese in my life. I didn't know that was a dish.
Wow.
So to me,
Alexis,
it
you're
looked
from
like
the South.
lasagna.
You lived in Georgia. How have you never had baked mac and cheese?
I don't like cheese.
You
I
don't
don't
have
like
to.
foods that touch. And
Really?
I'm not always crazy about casserole style dishes. I digress.
No, that all
My
makes sense.
point was that I like to imagine that the baked macaroni and cheese was the solution to all of our problems.
Well, then they never got a solution because they threw that mac and cheese away.
And my question is, why do they not have a keep warm setting on the oven? Where
My
was
question
that?
is, why did they just leave it in the oven all day? Just
They're
take it out
firefighters.
of the oven.
Somebody else was in the firehouse.
Yeah,
You
and that
always have
person
somebody
couldn't
behind.
take the mac and cheese out.
I don't know.
They could have taken it out and then
not?
texted whoever was in the firehouse, like, hey, we're 10 minutes away. Put the mac and cheese back in the oven. I have so many
Groceries
the man
are too
behind doing
expensive.
nothing in this show. Literally nothing.
Groceries are
So
too
true.
expensive. Fire departments are too, they don't have the luxury of throwing out an entire casserole.
No.
No one does in this economy.
Our firehouse
especially in
is, and
Los
I
Angeles.
shop at the same grocery store, and let me tell you, it's an experience every time.
Anyway, the point was they solved the problem too quickly. It made the main antagonist of the episode feel like the C plot, which it's sort of was. Which
I would argue it was the same plot of that episode.
which makes it
All right.
it's Happy Rainbow. No.
So you think that it's a trope that can be used as a cop-out. I agree with that completely. It's like a
Yeah.
fail-safe, here's how we're going to finish this and make one person look good kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also just the way to solve your problems with the least amount of people getting hurt.
Yeah.
And it's you want to believe in the good of all people, and you want to believe that people have decency inside them at some point, and you can appeal to their better nature, and it's nice. It's not real.
I think that worked specifically for me with that character is because the whole episode is him being a washout of the
Mhm.
Fire Academy and him wanting to be a hero. And it was just preying on preying has a bad connotation here. Eddie is utilizing this piece of information about this person to appeal to their need to feel like the hero in this moment. I think
Yeah.
it's effective in that way.
Yeah. I
We need to get Alexis in here. Alexis wanted Marissa to go first, and we got sidetracked 10 ways and sideways. So, Alexis, what give us your thoughts on this.
No, so I think another component of this type of trope, which I do like the talk down in Cell Block 911, despite this. However, I think an aspect of this trope is it usually requires one character, the character that is doing the negotiating, has usually been struggling with coming to terms with something or telling us something for an entire season, and decides in this moment it is the time to share it with an absolute stranger and everybody in the back of the ambulance. And that to me is the part of the trope that kind of feels like a cop-out. I buy a little bit more, just generally with this trope, I have a tendency to more buy the appealing to somebody's humanity than I do to the tough nut to crack, just deciding to crack in that moment. That's the part that kind of feels a little cheap to me. And I think something that I liked about the chimney bomber montage was that it's not so much an aspect, it is cheesy, but for me it works because it's not us necessarily learning something about Chimney so much it is like Chimney taking advantage of the situation, like just to spill the tea. And I think that is a really fun like twist on that trope for me. So that was all I was referencing earlier.
So fair. All right, with that, we got a lot to get through here still. Who just wrote all caps The Dream?
It wouldn't be me.
Are you referring to the dream at the beginning of 514?
I was.
Okay, Liz, for context, we opened 514 with a beautiful morning in the Diaz household of Christopher like eating breakfast and getting ready, and Eddie having a conversation with him. Super normal, super not weirdly color graded or anything. And then all of a sudden, all of the bullet holes he has experienced over the course of his life start appearing, and it turns out to be a nightmare.
That's so Bucky Barnes coded. Is it not?
You're right. Eddie Diaz and Bucky Barnes have a lot in common, and I definitely have not read multiple fics where Eddie Diaz is the Winter Soldier.
Well, in my Marvel movie, wasn't Buck and Eddie? No, Buck was Bucky in an alternate multiverse. Remember?
Let me just say, every time I think
true.
I have had growth in terms of what I am attracted to, I learn again that there has been no change. That is all.
Is that all you had to say about The Dream?
No.
Joking.
Listen, I think The Dream really hits in part because I am somebody that like thirsts for those like domestic moments, I guess is what I'm going to call them. And we don't get a lot of them on 911, especially with the Diazes, right? Those are kind of spread far and few between. So to get one, it's like, okay, I'm in, I'm invested. And then it feels like such a turning of the dagger in my chest for it to turn into a nightmare. And it gets me every time. Every time I watch that episode, I spend the whole time being like, am I misremembering the wrong episode? Surely this one is not the one that turns into a nightmare. And then it does. But I put it in the doc more because I think it goes with that framing, that like media raised piece that we were talking about earlier, and the idea that like like framing this procedural differently like catches my attention. That is one for me that like I was like, well, now I'm invested in this whole fucking episode because like, you're bleeding. The bleeding never stops. You're always bleeding. Like while I'm trying to eat my Lucky Charms or whatever the hell they are. Like just devastating.
I personally am tired of dreams in TV specifically. Let me finish that sentence. It's been a long time since I've seen a dream trope that actually felt like a good use of time. Like they take so long. They usually are like, oh, it was a dream. Okay, moving on. I guess they're stressed. Right? Like I feel like I come to the same conclusion with them every time. And they're not like, when I think about Gossip Girl doing dream sequences, not like Gossip Girl's the pinnacle of television, but something they did do is they leaned into the most camp possible dreams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Blair Waldorf would have a dream and it was her as the lead in Breakfast at Tiffany's with the entire elaborate set and costuming of it. That can be funny. Like it's like, oh, of course Blair would dream in Breakfast at Tiffany's to figure out what's going on with Chuck. Like that's funny. But a dream sequence that's like domestic is actually nightmare is done so often. And I'm like,
to be fair, in 513, the previous episode, is where we get him finally having his like full-blown PTSD breakdown. So like it was like thematically relevant for the nightmare to be the opening of the next episode.
I just feel like we could have accomplished the same thing with a therapy cold open.
I get,
we do need therapy in that up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, Liz. I'm somewhere on both sides, I think, because I think it is an overused trope. And I do think it was all a dream, or, oh no, I just woke up from a nightmare. Cold open, like, is overused. But I also like don't know what the solution is for the like panic realization moment. Oh, I'm actually not okay. And now I need to enter a journey of becoming okay again. Like, in my begging you to show, not tell me, like, that is sort of the way to show, not tell. But I do think, like, maybe we could keep it snappier. Like, let's get to the nightmare part a little quicker. I don't know.
That's fair. All right. Yeah, oh, this is a great point from JJ. Because Christopher is in so few episodes, it is effective because we are hooked in. We're getting more Christopher content, and so like having that extended scene is great because we love and adore and will die for Gavin McHugh, and getting to see him on the screen for any reason at all is a joy and a treasure.
We also, and this may be a hot take, but I would argue that we do not actually see as much of the parent-son dynamic between the two of them as we are told that we see, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
we as an audience are instructed to assume a lot of things about that dynamic that have never actually been shown to us. The essay I could write about the sock drawer in the second season, it's a long one, right? But so I
That
think-
one episode in the season where they're packing to go to Texas, and we hear about Christopher all episode and what he's doing, but we do not see him for a single moment.
we never see him, right? And the parenting is handled the same way, right? So like if we like Christopher's going to camp, like we're asked to assume a lot about that parent-child relationship. We're not actually seeing that. Like Eddie is just having that conversation about Christopher going to camp, right? So I think kind of going to JJ's point, that's another thing that connects us to that dream. It's like, oh, we are getting a parenting moment. Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like we are seeing what this school life that we only assume occurs, this kind of morning routine. We're actually seeing that happen. And I don't think we had, I don't know, I could be wrong. The last time I really remember seeing that is in one of my favorite episodes of the show, which is Is It Stuck? Is the title of that episode? I always forget.
7-1?
Uh,
Or is it? I think it might be Stuck. Yeah, it's the one after that.
Yeah, it's the Eddie as a dad episode. It's like
It's the
do the
yeah,
push-ups on the
Stuck,
coffee
yeah.
table. Yeah.
Because 7-1 is it's called 7.1. It's season 2, episode 1. I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
That's his
yeah.
introduction, and then the next episode is Eddie as a dad, and we get the whole like morning routine montage.
Yes,
with
I thought you
PTSD.
just dressed alike. Yeah, is the episode I really remember when we talk about like kind of their routine. So anyway,
All right. I'm going to hard transition because I couldn't think of anything. Let's talk about some of our favorite quotes from this episode. I'm going to start with what Marissa wrote down, which was just
Nothing.
great. Love it. Glad to see it.
I'll just sit here quietly.
Cool. Liz, do you have one?
I hate that it's an episode specifically about a writer, and Marissa had nothing, and my quote was from an episode that Taylor Wong did not write. In 4.8, there's this plot about like this alarm that all the neighbors are complaining about, and they want someone to go investigate why it's always going off. And then, spoiler alert, Angela Bassett goes to like suss out what's happening, and a woman trapped her husband, who she was getting a divorce from, behind a wall, and he was setting off the fire alarm to like try and get help because he was like Marissa, she like put him in a room, brick wall, plaster, like, and wanted him to die. And then they
Edgar Allan Poe style. Yeah.
Do you hear a rapping at the door? Oh my lord.
So then they're outside with a heat detector, right? Like half the team, and they're like, "Oh my god, there's a guy in there." And Angela Bassett's inside trying to figure out like where this husband is. And then they break down the wall, take out the bricks, and pull the husband out. And the wife goes, "What? He's still alive?" And I lost it. I was like, camp art. I love a woman on a mission. Like, just it was incredible. It was, yeah. So sorry, that was my standout quote.
I found a quote.
Okay.
Okay. In the final episode we watched, 14. Angela Bassett is playing solitaire, and she calls it a game of chance. And as a solitaire player, I just really appreciated that, because sometimes you lose and it's not your fault. And
Yeah.
I really felt seen by that.
I feel that.
I
I
wrote,
love
thank
that
you,
that
solitaire
made me
is a
feel
game of
seen in
chance.
911. That of all the things that happened in 911, it was Angela Bassett playing solitaire that got.
I mean,
I
that
love
is so Marissa coded.
Yeah.
Like, we could not get more Marissa coded.
Yeah.
Look, I went through all my notes. The only other thing I wrote is when Eddie said sounds like being a firefighter, and it was me yelling at him that being a teacher sounds nothing like being a firefighter.
Correct.
Terrible flirting. Terrible.
So bad.
But
Alexis,
consistent.
do you have-
It's consistently bad.
Yeah. That whole relationship.
Well, Eddie's
Same
game
vibe,
in general.
both are.
Like,
My love, do you have any standout quotes?
okay, listen, I love almost all of Jinx. There are so many quotes in that episode that I love. However, there is also this thing where a certain actor has said that he does his best on the show to never have meat in his possession, which is hilarious because in one of these episodes, he does have sausage, and we're just going to move past everything we could read into that situation. But there was a line in Jinx where where Buck says, that sounds like animal sacrifice, or it calls for animal sacrifice. And I'm not really down with that. And like the delivery is great. The like relationship to like him personally, I think is like really meta and really funny. And it was just a really good line. So that one.
Incredible. All right. I did pull yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I do have something. I do have something.
Mhm.
The opening sequence, the guy on the billboard, which is also in our thumbnail for this episode.
Unfortunately, yes.
I desperately need to know how those lines were written, that he is screaming while taped to the billboard. Or did they like set up the shot and say, okay, we need you to convince everybody to buy your CD, and they just let the actor go? Because the way that those lines are delivered, I just want to know how they were written on the page, because they were so guttural.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the standout quote, but it's more of a standout question to me about something that was written. How did that come to be? It was great.
I love that. All right. My standout quote from Jinx is the scene that I quote legitimately every time. And I often quote out of context whenever I think of it. And it's Eddie Diaz in the fire truck being his sassy little self. And he's like what? Gremlins? Boogeymen? Santa Muerte? And it's the like eyebrows on the Santa Muerte that get me with the little smirk every time. It's just I crack up. I can't take it. So yeah, that one had to be my standout quote for Jinx because it means so much to me personally. For defending place, I pulled a Ravi quote because that's the first time we get like an ounce of character from Ravi, and we love Ravi, we stan. And so he has the line talking to Hen, and he's like, I get why he ran back into the building to pay it forward, talking about the guy going through cancer treatment who saves the nurse who helped him through his treatment. Because that one always gets me, because I'm like, Ravi backstory. I will kill a man for Aravi begins, and I'm not afraid to say that on air. And then to wrap this all up, my standout quote from Dumb Luck is also another fave. It's from Christopher when we are at the equine therapy place, and the lady's like running down the list of things they're going to do together, and he just exasperatedly is like, "That sounds like work." And I'm like, that is such like so often I feel like Christopher is written either above or below his age, but that would just like perfectly encapsulated the like exasperated preteen energy, and I just love it so much. So, in summation, I do want to bully Liz into watching the rest of the actual episodes we assigned.
You do
But
not
other
need to
than
bully.
that,
You do not need to bully. I will. I'm actually excited too because I was looking forward to it and I really enjoyed that episode that I did watch.
But it is so incredibly Liz coded to jump into a random ass episode that is not on the schedule.
I also was like, why is Sly really wanting us to watch like the Vax episode? I was like, what was the significant? Like, I was really reading into it. I was like, was this like a really political moment in the 911 fandom? And then there was the whole thing about the guy. Like, I just had so many thoughts about it. I was like, what's the story? But no, it was just Liz watched an episode that Liz was not supposed to watch, which is fine.
Quick question before, and then I'll let Sly get back to Sly, the after party. Doesn't that guy come back? Don't the
Which
Cork
guy?
besties come back? The airline besties?
Oh, no clue.
Either one of them comes back or one of them is in an episode before that one. But one of those guys is in 2 episodes.
That's incredible.
That would
I'm
be a
almost
JJ
certain.
question because I cannot remember for the life of me.
I think that's right. Okay, continue.
I was just going to say, do we have any closing thoughts on the episodes we've watched?
Taylor Wong, you're a baddie. Keep writing. Support the writer's strike. Don't keep writing during the writer's strike. Do it later. But all of those things in the order they should be set in.
Every time Sly makes me watch 911, I'm on my period and I cry. Even though it's not a show for me, it still gets me.
Incredible.
That's my closing thought. I cry to defend in place.
My closing thought is that I am so happy that we did this. My other closing thought is that Liz and Marissa had exactly the responses to this that I thought they were going to have. And that is really validating to me personally.
We need to start doing that bit that you see on shows, like on game shows, where it's like before the episode starts, like you have a closed envelope that's like sealed with your thoughts, and then we break it open at the end of the episode, and we're like, I predicted that. Marissa would say this, and Liz would say this.
Marissa would be in this only for Angela Bassett. Marissa would also cry.
That's so real. Wow. Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you for joining us for my 911 Taylor Wong Cinematic Universe takeover. Happy 1 year since we had the wonderful Max Scout on the show. Happy finale last week. It's just a great time to be a 911 fan. And thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I love you all dearly. I'm so sorry to force Marissa to watch 2 different 911s back to back. But you know what? I commit to a bit. And with that, you can find me everywhere on the internet at CycloneMC. You can find me on Point in Progress, hopefully soon. We'll have the end of MCU coming out soon. And of course on Thirsty Thursday, where JJ and I have not yet decided what we're talking about during our 911 hiatus, but we have a million ideas and they all sound very fun. So we'll see where that goes. Marissa?
Yes, you can find me everywhere on the internet at Miss Abobessa, specifically TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And oh babies. It's gonna be a big week. You're gonna want to be following me and only me. No, I'm just kidding. Follow everybody, but especially follow me, because guess who's coming to Chicago? Taylor Swift.
I thought you were going to say Liz.
I didn't know we were doing a reveal. Liz is coming to Chicago. Liz is gonna be in my house.
For the first time, 2 co-hosts of Walter the After Party will be in the same physical space at the same time. And we shall see how marriage works in real life for 5 days and 5 days only. I think that we should commit to doing a rant. Should we do it next week or the week? Well, it's like there has to be a rant reflecting on marriage in real life at some point. It's gonna be huge. I can't wait. I can't wait to see how tall Marissa is.
Not that
We
tall.
should do it the week after, and we can all do a themed rant of ranting about our marriages respectively. I think that would be
totally
fun.
thought you were about to say that like you and Alexis would meet up, and then and I was like, there's a lot of logistics that go into that. Like, where do you live?
Listen, Sly and I are always a bad day away from just hopping on a flight.
We
Being,
are.
like,
It's
true
true.
responsibility.
Valid. Very valid. Very valid.
Other than Chicago, where can people find you, Liz?
You can find me in Chicago on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, flying back on Monday. You can find me at Producer Liz on all platforms. Please don't find me in Chicago. That would be very weird. Maybe you'll see me at the Taylor Swift concert with Marissa. I'm very excited about all of that. I'm very mad about Maddie Healy, so it's a bit of a weird time to go to a Taylor Swift concert, but it is non-refundable, and I want to see Marissa. So guess what we're doing? What else is happening? I'm still working on my long video I was telling you all about last week. That's taking so many man hours. I'm looking forward to a week that will hopefully have a little bit more emotional bandwidth than weeks prior. And the start of June is coincidentally coming up with that. And that doesn't really mean anything other than I think the month of May is cursed for me. So that's a fun point of reflection. Really glad that May is over. And what else am I talking about this week? I have a lot of catch up to do. So I've been trying to catch up on everything I've missed the past few weeks. Little Mermaid press, Barbie, Actors on Actors is happening, Emmys. There's so much going on. So I'm trying to catch up and do some videos for y'all about all of that at Producer Liz.
Hell yeah.
And thank you, Sly, for hosting this week. You did such a great job.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Alexis, where can we find you?
Theoretically, at Just Alexis Blake. Sometimes I'm on the internet, sometimes I'm not. Who's to say?
A mood.
Yeah, I do have an important disclaimer, though, that I was instructed to share at the beginning of the episode that I then forgot about. But in last week's episode, and again in this episode, if you listen closely, you will hear my cat screaming like they are being murdered. It sounds like a child crying in the background. And I just want to let you know, rather I was instructed to share with the class, that is because every night she finishes her cat duties and decides that she has to bring us a stuffed lobster to cement her place in the household. And it comes with a mating cry, like a warrior hunting, like, Mah! So if you happen to be listening to our episode and you're like, what is that sound happening in the middle of the conversation, it is Sassy, and she doesn't apologize, but that is your explanation.
Iconic. We love a special guest.
Sassy just has a lot of thoughts about Buddy.
She has a lot of thoughts about a lot of things.
Yeah, I was gonna say Sassy has a lot of thoughts, period.
Period. Full stop.
Let's let Sassy have a rant in the next episode. You can just hold Sassy up to the camera and see what happens.
It's so funny because every other time I'm on camera, like if I'm on camera for school and I'm like learning about crime, Sassy is right here. If I am on camera teaching English to children in China mainland, Sassy is right here. This show, Sassy is never anywhere to be seen.
Sassy is not a part of the after party. No.
But we are, and we're here, and we're queer, and that was us throwing the after party. We'll see you next week, everyone.